If you are still unfamiliar with biblical scholar Dan McClellan, if you haven't been watching his videos, I honestly don't know if we can still be friends. And that makes me very sad. Dan has been doing some amazing work as of late. Earlier, too, maybe forever. I didn't know him when he was younger. He's especially good at pushing back against some of the big excusegists YouTubers here on YouTube. The guy I really like to see him push back against is my old buddy and former photobombing partner, Michael Jones from the Inspiring Philosophy channel, which again is right here on YouTube. If you're unfamiliar with Michael, I call him the hardest working excusegist in the entire apologetics industrial complex. Seriously, no one works harder or digs deeper attempting to polish the turd that is Christianity. He really gets his hands dirty and smelly. One of the things that I love most about Dan is that he pulls back the curtain on Christian excusegists and excusegetics more broadly. We kind of get to see how the sausage is made, and it's ugly. Let me cut a couple clips together, somewhat out of context, to show you what I'm talking about. The cuts don't change anything in terms of the question at hand, but it might be a little difficult to understand this taken out of the broader context. So I'll link to Dan's video. This is about whether Jesus claimed to be God in Mark's gospel and who the Pharisees think the Son of Man is.
So let's be clear. Jesus does not explicitly say to the Pharisees, "You are wrong." That's an interpretation of his words. It seems far more likely that what Jesus is saying is that the Pharisees have misunderstood who the Son of Man is. He is just as divine as the Ancient of Days, and that is why he has the ability to forgive sins.
So Jesus' response would need to be explicit if he were trying to address the relationship of the Son of Man to God, unless he already knew that his accusers believed the Son of Man was God. But we know that can't be what they believed, because if they believed that the Son of Man was already God, then they would already know the Son of Man has authority to forgive sins, because the Son of Man would be God.
First of all, let's just appreciate the fact that two very well-read people can have such a struggle trying to correctly interpret a passage in a book which is supposedly, allegedly inspired by the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving creator of the universe. Clearly, God knew this kind of thing would come up over and over again all throughout the Bible, causing endless confusion and dissension. Such a nutty prankster God, right? Getting his kicks at our expense. Such a naughty boy. Here's another favorite part of that same video. Michael is making an argument from authority, quoting two other biblical scholars and reading a passage from their book. And then he says,
"So Mark and Matthew tell us Jesus had an ability that only God has."
To which Dan replies,
And if you actually read the rest of Davies and Allison's commentary on Matthew, you would see that they do not interpret this as an identification of Jesus as God. Neither does Matthew. In fact, Matthew makes precisely my point for me. So if we go to Matthew 9, where we have the same story as in Mark 2, and we go to verse 8, it says, "When the crowd saw it, they were filled with awe, and they glorified God who had given such authority to human beings," specifically Jesus, who was a human being. So this is not saying Jesus is God. This is saying the things that only God was supposed to be able to do have been given to humans, specifically Jesus.
I don't mean to pick on Michael. All excuses just do the same thing. They twist, obfuscate, misdirect, quote mine, etc. Some of them even outright lie. Dan is continually giving us objective examples of various excuses just doing all of these things. And he will likely continue to do that for as long as he wants to keep making these videos. He will certainly be able to do that because the excuses just will never stop. But the point I want to make is this. Michael is obviously deeply invested in Jesus and Christianity. He's spent a good deal of his young life reading endless hours of content in order to produce his videos, which are very well done. I believe he's married to a good Christian woman and that their lives revolve around Jesus as well. His channel is obviously a huge part of his life. You You don't make videos like Michael's without investing a great deal of time, effort, and energy. But Michael didn't, nor will he ever, spend 3 years walking the ancient southern Levant with a guy he came to know intimately, personally, and love desperately, in a way no one, not even Michael, can do today. I'm speaking of Jesus, of course. If Michael, with the investment he has in Jesus and Christianity, is willing to twist things, quote mine, etc., how much more willing would the people who knew Jesus be to do the same? Maybe even a little more. All of us have invested in something, perhaps a relationship, where we stretch things a bit. Maybe we even fool ourselves. Michael doesn't seem to think he's doing anything other than what he should be doing in defense of the faith. Certainly Peter, James, and John would have done the same for their dear friend. Probably even unknowingly and without guile. I'm not suggesting anything otherwise. But whatever the case, that's clearly more likely than a violation of the laws of physics and biology, isn't it? Yeah. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching.